Welcome. So grateful we all get to do this together. My name is Mike, by the way, and I get to be on the teaching team here at Real Life, and it's always a thrill when I see Real Life on my calendar. Got any English teachers here? Any communication majors? Any journalists? Any Pulitzer Prize wannabes? Anybody just love writing? Then you know what simile is? You guys know what simile is? Here's the definition of simile: a figure of speech involving the comparison of one thing with another thing of a different kind, used to make a description more emphatic or vivid. Now, I ran across some real attempts by actual college students to use simile in their writing classes, and these are awesome. Let me just give you my top 5. Here we go. The little boat gently drifted across the pond, exactly the way a bowling ball wouldn't. That's an attempt at using simile. This one, John and Mary had never met. They were like two hummingbirds who had also never met. That's just great. This one's so romantic. Her hair glistened in the rain like nose hair after a sneeze. I love this one. Long separated by cruel fate, the star-crossed lovers raced across the grassy field toward each other like two freight trains, one having left Cleveland at 6:36 p.m., traveling at 50. If you've ever taken the ACT test or the SAT, you know where that college student was coming from. And I love this one. Her vocabulary was as bad as whatever. Those are just classic. Let me give you one more. Their money became like Godzilla, breathing fire and trampling their dreams. I wrote that one. Because it can be like that, can it? I mean, now, managed wisely, money can be a blessing and help a whole lot of people along the way. But managed poorly, you know as well as I do, it can become this fire-breathing monster that will chew you up, spit you out, and stomp you to death. And maybe that's why Jesus talked about money more than he did anything else, more than heaven and hell combined. The number one fighting word among married couples: sex, kids, in-laws, which Netflix series to watch. Not even close. It is money. And it's why we're trying to learn some practical principles together that can make some change for a lifetime. Now, I want to reiterate what Rusty's already been saying and the team. This series is in no way designed to bang some more bucks out of church people, or to pile on guilt, or to beat anybody up for financial mistakes. We all make financial mistakes. Man, Debbie and I, we made a truckload of them early on. So I'm just praying we could all just kind of put our defenses down, set any cynicism or pride aside, and just humbly allow God to teach us some basic principles that would allow you and me to manage what He has given us in a way that honors Him and brings help to other people and gives us a sense of freedom in this life. So as I get started, I want to dive into two basic principles that have really grounded me with all this. And basic principle number 1 is this. It's very simple. God owns it all. God owns it all. I forgot that. We forget that. Jesus would tell these stories that involved simile. He was brilliant at it, by the way. He would often begin his stories with, he'd say, the kingdom of heaven is like a guy who finds a buried treasure in a field and then sells everything he has to buy that field. The kingdom of God is like a shepherd who has 100 sheep, but he loses one, he leaves the 99 and goes after the lost one. The kingdom of heaven is like fresh wine. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast. It's like a mustard seed. It's like a net. It's like a wedding reception. And on. Jesus would use simile. And I want to use one of his stories as kind of a backdrop for some of this. Some of you are familiar with the story. It's found in Matthew chapter 25. It's one of those parables or stories that Jesus would tell. And this is how it starts. He says, again, the kingdom of heaven is like, or the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. Now, did you see our first basic principle hidden in that paragraph? It said he entrusted his money to them. Anybody teaching kids to drive right now? Can we just pause and pray for these people right now? When my kids started to learn how to drive, I entrusted my car to them. There was never any question that that car belonged to me, and I could take it back at any time for any reason. They only had responsibilities while I maintained the rights of ownership. In the same way, every single possession that I have, including my quote-unquote my car, really belongs to somebody else. It belongs to my Father. I might possess a lot of stuff, but I own absolutely nothing. You see, an owner has rights, and a manager simply has responsibilities, and I'm to manage his resources. I mean, the Bible, this principle is woven throughout the entire Bible. For instance, in the Old Testament, God reminds Moses that to the Lord your God belong the heavens, even the highest heavens, the earth, and everything in it. And then Moses goes on to remind the people, he says, you may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember, the Lord your God, for it's He. He gives you the ability to produce wealth and so confirms His covenant, which He swore to your ancestors as it is today. In a conversation with a guy named Job, you might have heard of him, God says this to him, who has a claim against me that I must pay? Because everything under heaven belongs to me. God, through one of the prophets, a guy named Haggai, reminds the people, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. A worship leader named Asaph penned these words from the Lord in Psalm chapter 50. God says, for every animal of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the insects in the field are mine. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell you, for the world is mine and all that is in it. Now listen, gang, God is not on an ego trip when He says all this. He just knows from experience, He just knows that we have a tendency to puff ourselves up with self-sufficiency and go through life saying, no, it's all mine. And man, that gets us in trouble, doesn't it? Psalm 24 says this, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. And King David, the guy who wrote that one right there, also said this, after God's people that he was leading poured out this huge, generous, grateful offering to God. And you would think as a leader, he would be tempted to say when all the people did that, he would say to God, so see that, God? See there? See what we did for you? How you like that? But instead, this is what he says. He says, who am I? And who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Because the truth is, everything comes from you. Everything comes from you, and we've only given you what comes from your hand. You see, the Bible's pretty clear about all this. God, He owns it all. And if I really believe this, it frees me up to let Him take back whatever He wants whenever He wants it. It's His anyway. While we were ministering in Las Vegas, I drove a really, really old, beat-up car that needed a ton of repairs. And we'd been saving someday to get something else. But, hey, it was serviceable. It had good tires and had a radio. That's about all you need. The paint was faded all over the thing. The passenger window was duct taped shut. It was an impressive ride. We were on our way from Las Vegas to California, and the transmission on that car fell out in Barstow, California. By the way, if you don't know Barstow, it's a gorgeous place to break down. And no kidding, I simply coasted down the hill from the exit ramp right into a car dealership. And I said, God, your car just broke. Now what? And I bought a car, and I left that old car just sit. True story, my kids still can't believe we did it to this day. But I had a lot of peace about it because it was his car. This principle allows me to see that not only is my giving a spiritual decision, but every spending decision I make is a spiritual decision. There's nothing more spiritual about giving than buying a car or taking a vacation or going to the grocery or remodeling your bathroom or playing golf or paying taxes or paying off debt. I'm using His resources to do all of that. Now, I have a great deal of latitude in how I use it, and as my Father, He wants me to enjoy it, but it's still His. And I'm going to have to give an account someday of how I managed His money. He owns it all. This first principle helps me get the who right. And the second principle I want to give you has been helpful to me to understand the why behind money stuff. The second principle is this. God has enrolled us in character development school. Did you know that? God's enrolled all of us in character development school. I believe the most important thing you bring home from work is not your paycheck. It's your character. God cares about your character and my character more than anything else, and He will use all kinds of things along the way to shape us. Jobs, kids, parents, in-laws, school, difficult neighbors, tough bosses, hard coaches, lingering illnesses, tragic losses. He will use all the stuff that this sometimes unfair life throws at us to shape our character and make us more like Jesus. That's his goal. And money management is just one of those things that has a way of growing you and me up. I heard years ago that there are at least 3 ways that God uses money. He uses money as a tool, a test, and a testimony. A tool, a test, and a testimony. First of all, he uses money as a tool to shape our character. His desire is to put you and me on the potter's wheel. He just longs to get his loving hands on us and shape us and mold us. And he will use money kind of like as a chisel to shape all those drives and passions and all those appetites within each one of us. For instance, I believe that God has placed within every single one of us an instinctive desire to excel. I mean, God is an active God, and he does things with excellence, and you and I have been made in his image. So there's nothing wrong with a healthy desire to excel. There's nothing wrong with healthy ambition. And a man or a woman who is gifted to make money ought to do it with excellence. However, we can't be naive in thinking that along with that drive doesn't come a bunch of potentially damaging temptations like greed and self-indulgence and insensitivity and envy and pride and apathy. In fact, statistics show that high achievers who make more than $100,000 give a much smaller percentage to charity than those who make less. You see, if ambition is not balanced, as our possessions grow, our character can shrink. So God uses finances, whether we have a little or a lot, as a tool to shape our ambitions and our attitudes and our perspective, our compassion, our generosity, and our contentment. So we ought to continually be asking God, what are you trying to teach me through all this? What do you need to chip away at in order to make me more like Jesus? So I'm learning that God uses money as a tool to shape my character, which is priceless to him. But he also uses money as a test, a tool and a test. Money can test my motives. It can make me ask, what is it I'm really about in this short life? Who am I really? Do I really love God? Do I genuinely care about other people? Is my heart expanding to generously share with other people? Or is the truth about me, I'm selfishly shrinking on the inside? Proverbs 1:19 says, when you grab all you can get, that's what happens. The more you get, the less you are. Not only does it test my motives, but it also tests my integrity. God wants to know, will you and I be honest with earning and managing his money? Again, it's not about the money. It's not about how much you earn, but rather, how did you earn it and how are you using it? He wants to know, is this helping you grow in honesty? Is it helping you grow in integrity? Several years ago, when you could still do this, I pumped gas in my truck, and then I pulled away from the station, totally spacing out and forgetting to pay for my tank of gas. You do that today, it'd be like grand larceny, really, right? I got almost home and realized it, and I went, oh man, I forgot to pay. Turned around, went back to the station, walked inside, said, hey, dude, I'm so sorry. Totally spaced out. I drove away without paying for my gas. And the guy behind the counter said, man, thanks a lot for coming back, because a lot of people don't. And by the way, man, I really love coming to your church. It's like, oh my goodness, wow, it was a close one, man. Not only does it test my integrity and my motives, it also tests my ability to manage really important things. Can I be trusted with really important stuff? Let's go back to Jesus' story. Look what it says in verse 16. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. They took whatever the master saw fit to give them, and they wisely put it to work. And notice the amount was not important. To the 5-bag guy and the 2-bag guy, he says the exact same thing. Check it out. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling a small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. The exact same commendation To both of them, it's not about the dollar amount. God is simply testing our ability to manage temporary things like money to see if he can entrust us with really important things, eternal things, like the precious lives of people. Jesus said on another occasion in Luke chapter 16, he said, unless you're faithful in small matters, you're not going to be faithful in large ones. I mean, if you cheat, like even a little, you're not going to be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who's going to trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you're not faithful with other people's money, why should you be trusted with money of your own? Listen, no one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other, be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. So God uses money as a tool and as a test, but he also uses it, I'm learning, as a testimony. More than what I just verbally say, all of this reveals what I'm really passionate about. All of this reveals what I truly think and feel about God. Look at the last guy in the story, verse 24. Then the servant with the one bag of silver came and said, "Oh, master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant, gathering crops you didn't cultivate. So I was afraid. I was afraid I'd lose your money. So I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." And the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant." Now this guy obviously didn't know the master's character. Calls him even harsh and dishonest. Accused him of stuff that were not true. Probably just to excuse his own irresponsibility. Or maybe, just maybe, he was ticked off that he only got one bag, while the other two got more. So he just took what was given to him, put it on the shelf, went through his life doing his own thing. His heart was never about pleasing the one who blessed him with these resources. And gang, money testifies to the world how you and I really feel about God. Whether we really know him or not. Whether we really love him or not. Whether we really trust him with our lives. God reminds us in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, he says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, I'll never leave you. I'll never abandon you. Gang, that's the truth about God. He's not a harsh man like the one bag dude said. And if your life is free from the love of money, you can see the truth of God's character. And then your life just becomes this gratitude-filled testimony to your family, to your kids, to your neighbors, to your coworkers, your classmates, of how you trust God that has given you more than enough. I'm telling you, these two basic principles have been so formative in my understanding of handling money. God owns it all. And he's enrolled me in character development school. And he will use money in my life as a tool, as a test, and as a testimony. And I can't tell you all how stoked I am that so many of you are saying these days, I want to be a good manager of what God has entrusted to me. I want to live freely. I want to live lightly. I want to live simply. I want to cultivate contentment. I want to cultivate peace in my life. I really do want to make a difference with my resources. I want to make a difference with my life. When we understand that God is the owner of all things, that God is the giver of all good things, it takes a whole lot of pressure off our life. We can trust that he allocates his resources how he sees fit. We can be grateful for whatever he has put in our hand. And we can be content as we work hard just to be a good manager of what he entrusted to us. When Debbie and I first got married, we were clueless about money management stuff. I mean, absolutely clueless. And I was working all kinds of jobs. We just had a new baby. I was working at a gas station. I was refereeing basketball. I was working construction. I had a part-time student ministry job making $35 a week. We had little money and a brand new baby, but one day it all changed. We got a letter in the mail, and on the envelope it said, "You have been approved." I went, "Me? Approved? Me? Approved? I've been looking for approval all of my life." And I opened that envelope up, and it didn't take long for Debbie and I to get on the wrong side of compounding interest with that brand new credit card we had, which added unneeded stress in our life. Brought a whole lot of stress into our marriage, and we had to slowly and intentionally dig out from under some very, very stupid, impulsive non-God honoring decisions in the past. But with God's wisdom and His supernatural help through the years, we just started consistently working a plan. And for a few decades now, Debbie and I have been able to walk financially free. Things like compassion, generosity, and trust, and peace of mind, contentment, those things are, for the most part, guiding our lives. We had to learn this novel concept called a budget. You ever heard of that? We learned to get on a budget, started working this budget. And we both decided that we were going to start working a consistent giving plan. We just personally decided that we were going to give at least 10% of our income right off the top of whatever we had to advance God's purposes through whatever local church we were a part of. And so we started doing that. And then in addition to that, we would set aside some money intentionally. We had a little fund that set on the side where we could just bless people in the moment, somebody that had a need, or we could extend help to a neighbor or our friends, or give to other ministries that we felt called to help, and even strangers as we felt called to help. And we've been able to participate through the years, not only that way, but in like these above and beyond sacrificial giving initiatives in just about every church we've been a part of through the years. The most recent one was Mission Church. And many of you know that Mission Church, our kids started Mission Church over in Ventura, and Real Life was huge in launching Mission Church, and so grateful. And I got to preach there just a couple of weeks ago, and we did this thing where we had trash cans, and we talked about breaking addictions and stuff, and we had little pieces of chains, and people could come up and grab a piece of chain while we were doing some worship songs, and they could just say, I want to give my life to Jesus Christ, and I want His help in breaking this stronghold in my life. And people lined up down every aisle with chains and walked to the front, and it was so cool to hear this crash, crash, crash. There's people throwing chains in these steel trash cans, and man, I stood there watching this, and I got so teared up. And I'm telling you, not one time did I think, man, I wish I'd have brought a new flat screen instead of giving to this church. I was so grateful. And there's nothing else I'd rather do with my money than to see that happen, to see people set free. And now please hear me. I'm not telling you this to say, hey, look at us. Far from it. God brought us such a long way out of our jacked up, self-centered, impulsive ways. We just decided together that we needed to practice consistent gratitude and generosity in our life, and actually just do what Scripture said to do in Proverbs 3:9, which says, honor the Lord by giving Him the first part of all your income. And I'm just telling you, after all these years, man, we have been so incredibly blessed with our life. We took God up on the challenge that He offers over in Malachi chapter 3, where He says, just test me in this. Just test me. See if I don't come through. Just bring the tithe, bring that 10%, and just see if I don't open up the windows of heaven and pour out more blessings on your life than you can handle. Just test me in this. And I just know that if you will take Him up on this challenge, you will discover that the one who has given you a reservation in heaven can also be trusted to provide for you right now. I got a really good friend who was a relatively, actually he's a brand new follower of Jesus. Just a great guy, fun guy, funny guy, super honest, very outgoing, very loud kind of guy, very, very successful guy as well. But he was brand new to following Jesus. And one weekend I was talking about tithing and generosity and stuff. He comes up to me after the service, I'll never forget it. And he goes, bro, come here. Pulls me in the back. And he shows me some math he'd been doing on the back of his church program. He goes, bro, 10%? 10% of $500 is $50. That's not a big deal. But look at this, man. This is what I make. 10% of this is huge. I said, all right, dude, let's just pray that your income will go down so you can afford to tithe. I remember he punched me in the shoulder real hard. So I'm just kidding. But he has become this super generous, non-stressed out, even more successful guy now. Don't make this like a legalistic thing. Just do it out of your gratitude for God. Whatever you decide, just work toward giving a percentage right off the top to consistently demonstrate to God, I'm grateful for all that I have. It's all yours anyway. take this right off the top, Lord. I want to thank you for all you've done in my life. I want you to take this and use it to advance your causes in this world because I trust you to provide for me. You're my Father, and I love you, and here's my heart. I'm so, so thankful. To practice gratitude and to learn contentment and to practice generosity, man, it's just such a better way to live your life. And God wants to help you get there. He really does, because he cares about your life. He doesn't need the money. He cares about you. He wants you to experience contentment and peace and joy and the blast it is by giving your life away. And, you know, Jesus said it's so much better to give than to receive. And he wasn't doing a message on tithing when he said that. He just said, let me give you a law of the universe. It's so much better to give yourself away than to get stuff for you. It's just a better way to live your life. And then as we cooperate with his wise and loving leadership, we can start to experience that. And we can become men and women who know that Jesus Christ has forgiven our sin debt, and we just live gratefully with gratitude and joy. That's happening in the life of these two, so take a look at this real life story.